saw in front of me was the gray man, like at a campfire. And then a second later, I was above him with a sword in my hand, and I killed him.
Whoa.
Right.
Whoa.
Yes.
Have you lived on this planet before? In another time? Another place? About half the people of the world believe in reincarnation. That a human soul journeys through hundreds or even thousands of lives on its path to enlightenment. Fiona Harris is uniquely gifted in the art of past life regressions. Using gentle hypnosis, Fiona is able to help clients reconnect with subconscious memories of their past lives. For each episode in this series, Fiona will do a past life regression with our guest. She and the guest will then join me on the podcast to discuss the past lives they discovered and how this information will be utilized by the guest in their life moving forward. Please join us. Our guest today is Cynthia Berkshire.
We can take your dad's car and drive upstate at Adirondacks.
Born and raised in the Midwest, educated at the University of Michigan, where she met the love of her life, Alan Berkshire, Cynthia rose to the very highest echelons of Chicago's financial world, ultimately serving as managing director at Chase Securities. At the height of her career, Cynthia left the financial industry to focus on raising their 4 beautiful children. She and Alan moved to Los Angeles, where Cynthia served on a number of nonprofit boards and later opened 2 seasonal restaurants near their summer home on Lake Michigan. Wife, mother, executive, loyal friend, entrepreneur, Cynthia Berkshire has thus far lived a very full life.
I've been on the east side trying to get some me time. Want to see you every night.
Welcome, Cynthia Berkshire, to our podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We're doing a podcast, as you know, about past lives. The idea is to have people come on and then we'll get to know a little bit about their life here, but then also see how past lives of theirs have influenced different things that they're experiencing in this life. And so I invited you to come and be part of this podcast and to see how it all works. And you're here with me in Los Angeles. We have Fiona Harris in Calgary. Hi, Fiona.
Hi, everybody.
So you and Cynthia got together prior to this recording. Tell us a little bit about what you did.
So we did a session through Zoom, and we chatted for a little bit. We got grounded, very, very relaxed, and I led Cynthia through a past life regression. And how that works is as we become deeply relaxed, our brain kind of goes from beta into alpha into theta. And theta is deep relaxation with heightened focus. So the client is awake and aware, easily able to talk, to do whatever, but their subconscious mind is giving them images from a past life, which is what our intention was for our session.
Would you say that you hypnotized her?
Yep. It's hypnosis.
Hypnosis. Okay. So you hypnotized Cynthia. She went into a deeper state where she accessed information in her subconscious, you think?
Yes. So when you're thinking about, let's say, Christmas, and you think, where am I going to put my Christmas tree? Last year it was over there. In your mind, you maybe have a vague image of a Christmas tree where it was the year before. It might be crisp. It might be more faded, but you are creating that. Consciously, you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that, or I did that. When we're in a hypnotized state and we're accessing a past life, it comes from the same place. So you're not seeing like a movie across your eyelids. It's coming from where you imagine things. So sometimes it's very crisp and sharp. Sometimes it's a little bit more blurry or like a quick flash, where our subconscious mind is reaching out and bring in our past selves for us to be able to experience.
So stored, you're basically like a memory stored in our subconscious are these recollections of past lives. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to say it's stored in our subconscious. Like, where is our subconscious? Is it inside our physical body? Is it attached to, source energy? I believe that our subconscious is not just in here. There's something else we're accessing. Like this is my belief. So imagine an octopus. The head of the octopus is our higher selves, and it's everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. The tentacles of the octopus are like all of our different, like this is Jay right now. This is Jay in 1840. This is Jay when he was a Viking or whatever. Each tentacle feels separate, but they're actually all connected to our higher self. And so, Jay or Cynthia right now is accessing a past life. They're just accessing another part of themselves that is existing somewhere else in time and space. Like, I don't think time is linear. So it's not like we're just going into some weird memory that's like in our DNA or something. We're like a radio getting the signal, if that makes
Cynthia,
sense.
do you mind that Fiona just called you an octopus? Is that a problem?
Not at all, because it's exactly, you're so good at describing it, because the way you've described it is how I experienced it. I mean, the session itself, being hypnotized, I was a little bit skeptical because I'm not a good meditator, and I wasn't sure she would be able to successfully get me there. And I was, hearing the leaf blower in the neighborhood, like I was very aware of where I was. But sure enough, these images that were not my imagination, I pretty quickly I knew, wait, I'm not imagining, this is coming, this
you
is
were
sourced
absolutely
elsewhere.
clear on that.
I was clear, and believe me, I went in with a certain amount of skepticism.
Yeah.
And even in some of the first images that appeared to me, I was thinking, wait, am I imagining this? Is this an image that I've seen? Am I creating this? And it was pretty clear it was not.
It's not always the case, right, Fiona? Don't most or many people wonder whether they're just making this up?
I think most of us wonder that. I mean, even in my own experiences with regression, I have to wonder, am I making it up? Why wouldn't we think that? It's literally coming from the same place that our imagination comes from. Like, our brain has to decode something to give us any kind of, like if you have an apple, your brain has to show that you're feeling the weight of it and the temperature, and you're looking at the color, and maybe you're smelling the apple if it's a smelly apple, let's say. So our brain has to give us images. It maybe gives us sounds, and it comes from the same place where all of our thoughts are coming from. Of course we're going to question it. What usually happens is clients will be like, oh, I don't know, maybe this is real, I don't know. And then a few days later, they're like, oh my God, this weird synchronicity happened. Oh, this other thing happened after. A lot of times clients can see things in that life that make sense in this life with them or helps them in some way.
But Cynthia, your experience, that's interesting. You really were like clear that this was not just coming from...
It was not. I was not controlling the narrative. I mean, the story that developed, and when we actually got into it, I can give you the example, but it made me a complete believer
that you were having an experience of your past life. Wow, yeah. That's amazing. So before we get into the story, let's just. I asked you to come and do this because, well, for two reasons. One is, I know you to be a spiritual person. Because over the years we've had little talks here and there, stuff like. Tell me a little bit about who you are, your spiritual life. Like what is your spiritual orientation?
Grown up very traditionally Christian, mainstream church.
Where?
Was born in Gary, Indiana. Lived in the Midwest until about 2006 when came to California. And throughout my life, I've either belonged to a Methodist church or a Presbyterian church. When my children were small, dragged them to Sunday school every Sunday. I probably, attend organized church now, maybe a couple times a month.
And do you feel, as a kid, did you feel connected to the church? Did you feel a spiritual connection?
Yes, and I went to parochial grammar school, so I had a regular, practice of worship and involvement. And interestingly, I felt very close to God, and in at that point in my life, and have sort of throughout, while I've maintained the practices and think of myself as a Christian, and I've not had the intimacy or the feeling of love. And maybe it was just a childlike feeling, but I've been trying to find that again. It's something I pray for all the time.
When and the years that you felt most connected to God were high school, or was pre-high school, or
like 8th grade through high school, I would say.
8th grade to high school. And how did that manifest? Like, what was that feel? Like, how is that different than it is today?
Just God was a very concrete, image in my mind. Felt, great clarity on all the answers were there. Just a lot of belief in doctrine as taught. And I think the difference is, as with age, and certainly now at my current age, and one of my intentions for this session
41.
was 41. God bless. Was to what is the next chapter? Like I have so much to learn about faith, because in knowing friends like you, I have a good friend, Felix, who's a Buddhist. I mean, I know it's some combination. It's not this rigid line or path. It's not God is taught in Vacation Bible School.
Right.
That's actually much richer. And and again, after this experience with Fiona, I'm more convinced than ever that it's like I've just started a new exercise. I want to flex the muscle. There's so much more to learn, and it's going to be so rich.
I know we're not getting into the regression yet, but there's a part in your experience where you connect with God. And that was freaking believable. Yeah.
All right, wait. Before we get to the regression, I'm excited. I don't know anything about what happened between you guys, so all of this is me learning about it too. But so the other reason I asked you to be part of this podcast was, I know that you're a war buff. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I've always enjoyed, for whatever reason.
You love war.
I love war, and I've often made the comment, I'm sure that I was a soldier in a previous life, and
But you kind of make it half jokingly.
You're right, exactly. Not everyone believes, not everyone would agree, but I've always been drawn to reading certainly nonfiction, particularly Civil War and World War II, or my two wars that I enjoy reading, and
your favorite wars.
My favorite wars, and I think I've shared with you that I was very convinced that had the feeling that I was in the Civil War as a Confederate soldier and died in that experience.
Okay, so you kind of just had this gut feeling that you were involved in the Civil War in some way as a Confederate soldier.
As a Confederate soldier.
And that you got killed in battle.
In battle. Right.
Wow. And what made you feel that way?
I don't know. And that's it. And that's it. I've had it for a long time, and I have wondered, is it, because I've read so much and seen so many images and first account narratives and things that, oh no, this is my imagination. I'm just kind of assuming something from these books and things that I've read. But with the persistence of time, and because it still stays with me, and just more as I'm intellectually more curious about spirituality in a broader sense, and have been introduced to people and practices around multiple lives, it's become like, oh no, I think there's something to that. So when you mentioned this podcast and this chance to have the session with Fiona, like, please me, I would love to explore
She did,
this.
by the way, Fiona, when I was talking about
aggressive.
Really? She was like, how do I do that?
A little aggressive.
Yay, I'm glad.
Here she is. All right. So
wait, I just want to ask a quick question of Cynthia first. You just had a feeling that you'd had a past life and that you died. You just had a knowing without any, but didn't you also mention, and maybe I shouldn't bring this up yet because we're going to talk about, but you had certain images once in a while that would flash.
Yeah, that's it. I've always wondered, am I just carrying, did I see this image in a book, and for whatever reason it has stayed with me, and it's an image of a Confederate soldier. An alive Confederate soldier, not dead, alive Confederate soldier. And I've had that image with me for a long time. And did I read it in a book, or is it somehow?
Will you describe the image just so we can see it a little bit?
A young man in gray uniform, cape, sort of longer hair as was the way, but
I'm getting shivers right now.
Yeah, right, and just young, sort of impossibly.
And do you
young.
see him out in fields?
No.
Or
It's always been almost like a snapshot, like a Matthew Brady not formally
Right.
posed, a
Right.
candid on the battlefield, gun in hand.
Oh, on the battlefield.
Yeah,
Oh,
but not
okay.
not engaged in battle,
Right.
but gun in
Posing on the
hand,
battle,
like
yeah.
an active.
Right.
So that's been the sort
That's-
of reoccurring image.
And starting from when? At what point in your life?
I wish I had a memory, Jay. I mean, it's something that I've had for a very long time.
Okay.
Many years.
And she called it the gray man.
The gray man, yeah.
The gray man.
Yeah, she'd just be like, the gray man. Because he was wearing gray. But wait, did he have red hair, were you saying? Or was that me imagining that?
No, he did have red hair, and that's why I thought it was me. I mean, or that was, in this, when I started thinking about the image, and I'm like, or his hair was chestnut or warm colored, and I thought, okay, maybe that's me. Maybe that's what I'm remembering.
Okay, so you had this session with Fiona. Tell us what happened. What was your experience?
As I said, I went in with plenty of skepticism. Didn't think I was a great candidate for hypnotism. Wasn't sure that I would get to the state that was necessary. With her soothing voice and prompts, pretty quickly I was very relaxed, and it just felt like being relaxed.
So you were skeptical. You kind of had the sense that there were past lives, and maybe even you had a connection to a past life. You were more skeptical about your ability,
My ability to access them, my
I
ability to
and that this process would.
You're right. Be a good student.
Right.
Right. And just that I wouldn't have, because as I said, I've tried to meditate,
Right.
and I've never been very successful at it.
Yeah.
So I just thought, like, I'm getting really relaxed. I hope I don't fall asleep on Fiona because I'm so relaxed. But still cognizant of, I heard noises. I knew exactly where I was.
I'm just curious. Did you have a sense of dropping down?
Yes. And part of it was, your body's getting heavy, were some of the prompts.
Yeah.
And then physically, and this is where, her, such a fabulous proctor or guide in this process, suddenly.
Which, I think the word is witch.
Witch.
Yeah. Right? Fiona?
That's
a
right.
technical
She's a
term.
very talented
Sure.
witch. But pretty soon, this relaxation then turned into, what is the first prompt?
We went to the safe place.
Place.
I always take a client to a safe place.
Yeah.
It's like it's like the green room in a way, right?
Right, exactly.
You're just kind of, you're just in there. You feel safe. You've created it yourself. And then from there, I took you down deep, both, physically, emotionally,
Right.
or whatever. I took you down, and then we had access to this hallway with all of these doorways, each one leading to a different past life.
Well, and let me, may I say this just so I don't forget to say it?
Do it,
So
do it.
when she took me to the safe place, that was a place of my imagination. She's like, choose a place that you want to be. And I was sort of thinking, I guess I want to be outside, or do I want to be like in my bedroom? Like, where's my safe place? And it took me a minute to sort of like, I was definitely
Go through
like
the choices.
creating. I was creating, right?
Yeah.
And so I created my safe place, but then I was, and what's interesting too is I was conscious enough to be surprised by things or like to notice things.
Right.
So then as she started to lead me to the hall with the doors, I'm realizing like I'm not imagining, I'm not in controlling this. Like it looks a certain way.
That you hadn't decided upon.
Right. And she's
Yeah.
like, look at your feet. And that's a wooden floor. And then I was certainly like, wait, I'm not driving this.
That's so interesting.
And it was a real like demarcation point. And then you were continuing like go look at the doors, and I was sort of excited to see the doors. And that's when I'm like, I really think my consciousness sort of shifted when you started taking me down the hall to the doors, because then I was like, oh my gosh, that door, like choosing the doors, and I was not driving that. I knew that my mind was not driving that. And I was excited by that, like, oh, shit, I got here.
All right, so Fiona has led you to these doors, and what happened?
Okay, so there was a hall, and immediately to my left was a door that I could tell there was light behind. It was a traditional looking door, and it was very inviting. Open the door and go in. And what was interesting is, as I said, it sort of glowed to invite me in. But once I got in, the images in my mind were all black and white. It was all gray screen. Yeah. And I was immediately in. I felt like an urban environment, and I saw a person that I recognized as myself though it did not necessarily look exactly like me now, but I somehow knew that it was me, and I was female, and I was walking in a crowd of people with purpose, and I noticed pretty quickly, like, oh, I feel like small and tight and young, like my body felt different. Oh, I can walk very fast, and I clearly was trying to get somewhere with
You were
purpose.
walking in what kind of environment was it?
It was an urban environment.
Yeah,
it was a street. There were other people on the street.
A modern city? Or?
No, I was thinking, am I in Gary, Indiana, which is, I didn't experience it in the 60s. I know at wartime it was a very bustling, like in the 40s and 30s it was bustling because it's a center of steel production. So I felt like I was in an urban street walking with another crowd of people, everyone sort of purposely walking. And I wasn't sure where I was going. I sort of thought maybe I needed to get to work or something. But pretty quickly, I was on the porch of like a farmhouse, and a nondescript woman, again, nobody I recognized, sitting outside. I open the door, I hear the screen door shut, and I'm in this wonderfully warm house. And I'm looking outside a window that's open, and there's a farm field, a field of hay, and just felt so like happy to be here. Like I'd finally gotten to my destination. The kitchen was, in the middle of cooking, though there was no one in the house. And so I was looking for the people, and walked outside to see a group of people under a tree, under a shade tree. And one young man was not, the only thing, I could not see his face.
You couldn't really make out his face.
But a young man, clearly like sort of looking for me to come to him, waiting for me to come. And so I went and joined him. And it was just, I felt very comfortable. Right. I knew it was a contentment and happy. And then Fiona said, okay, let's look in this life for a significant moment or the happiest moment. I don't remember the exact prompt.
It was probably a significant moment that was a turning point of some sort. Yeah.
So then pretty quickly, I am with a soldier who I assume was this young man, though again, no faces, but a man in uniform down, carrying the sword, and he's boarding a ship, and I'm saying goodbye to him.
So there's a man that you meet at this home, and now is it the same man who's boarding the ship?
I believe it's the same man, but his outfit has changed. And again, I'm not seeing any faces, and I have this sense of him leaving, and I think, you might remember if I expressed sadness.
Yeah, what I remember is when you're in that family home, you actually had more emotion there. You felt really connected to everybody. There was like a really strong feeling of connection and belonging in that place. Yeah, I think when he was saying goodbye, there was like a little bit of sadness, but maybe stoicism, or trying to just not really show emotion.
And was he going off to war?
He was going off to war.
You said the clothing was 1940s. So
yeah.
So it's World War II then.
I think it was World War II.
Yeah.
Then,
one of your favorite wars.
One of my favorite wars,
yeah.
and that's again like, okay, wait, am I leading this? Is this just But the images were just, I was like watching the screen, like I was not controlling it, and so the next from this moment, I then am in an office setting, and my clothing has changed, and I had the sense of like I'm the boss, or I'm more mature, and I suddenly had on again, I'm still a woman obviously, but I had a jacket, and it was I had this sense, okay, so I just worked the rest of that life.
And you had the sense that maybe that man did not come home.
When it became clear is I think Fiona said, should we go to the end of this life? And I was then an old woman in bed, and at that moment I knew he never came home. And and I was looking at my wrinkly arms and my old lady hands, and I think, and Fiona, you said like, let's go ahead and die, or let's go ahead.
I said it in a nice way.
I know.
I was like, well, let's
Fiona
see what
always
happens
invites people to die in the nicest ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Please die. No.
Yeah. No.
I said I said let's go a little bit further. What happens when you leave your body? And that's when your regression went like really powerful, I think. Like lots of them. Remember, we were both sobbing, I think. Weren't we both?
So she said, Fiona.
I had Kleenex over my face. I was like this.
Fiona very kindly asked you to die.
Yeah, right.
And you left your body. What happened?
Well, I think she said, "Are you ready?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm so excited. I want to see what's on the other side. I want to see." And my soul sort of went through the head of my body, and I was in this beautiful place with the young man. And the whole dream has been or the whole sequence has been in gray and white. And I go and I die, and I'm suddenly in this red and white checked dress. And there's color.
It's like the Wizard of Oz.
It's like the Wizard. It is like fucking Wizard of Oz.
Oh my God.
And
even the dress, yeah.
Right. And so this image of this dress, and I was so happy because I was reunited with this loved one. And I think Fiona may have said, like, who is it?
Yeah.
And I'm like, is it Alan? Are you Alan? Are you my husband?
Right.
And again, faceless, but I knew I loved this person so much. I was so happy to be with him, and I think that's what I kept saying. I love you so much.
When you were the old woman and you were dying, were you scared of dying?
No, that's it. I was like, let's get on with this. I want to see what's next.
But that was Cynthia saying that, or the old woman?
No, the old woman. The old woman was like, because I think the old woman's life had been maybe she anticipated seeing being reunited. In fact, I haven't listened to the recording, but now that I think of it, I remember sort of thinking like being hopeful that there was something more, and dying did not hurt at all. It was easy.
She's an excellent dyer.
Both of my regressions.
All right, so then you saw this man.
Yes.
And you're reunited, and you have this incredible feeling of joy for reuniting with him.
What was so interesting, too, is my body shift, because when I was in bed as the old woman, I felt heavy and big. And then as soon as I died, it was in this new thing, I was young again and like strong. And I had a real sense of that in the moment that was, wow. And no, I just was like, it was just magical, and I was enjoying it all. And Fiona's like, stay here as long as you want. You're clearly.
It was joyful.
Well, and you said to me in the moment, like it felt like you, and maybe I said, I think I've left this Waco, and you said, yeah, I think you found joy.
Yeah.
So when you guys were crying in this moment, were you crying in joy, or it was just?
It was just that almost beautiful bittersweet joy of like loss and then rejoining someone. I don't know. I was sobbing, like I really was like trying not to be like ugly crying, but I pretty much was ugly crying behind my tissue paper, right? Like just like
It was an intense emotion,
and it was almost like her life was just kind of black, white, and gray. So like it just was kind of a dullish life, like, and it was weird because I don't think I may have had maybe one or two other clients say that their experience was black and white, but it's kind of a rare thing. But I think her life maybe felt kind of drab, and then when she moves into death, all of a sudden the colors are here. I've got like this red and white dress.
I just remember, just feeling like this intense joy and emotion, and
And I asked present Cynthia, who was there. I said, take that emotion and like place it in all of your cells. Like take that joy. Like we don't get to be that joyful that often. I was like, drink it, like absorb it into your actual physical body. Like take that in, because super healing, like really, really good for your cells to feel that emotion.
And you also said you keep that love. That love is, yours.
It's yours always. You're never without him. Like whoever he was, obviously he's the head of another octopus.
Yeah, right.
And really, we're all one giant octopus if you macro that, right?
If you go the full octopus metaphor.
Yeah, we don't lose anybody. We don't lose our pets. We don't lose our loved ones ever. Like physical, the finger puppets of our higher selves running on the planet. We've lost people, but really, we're all connected. Like we are all connected, and we never lose anybody ever.
Okay, so you had this kind of crescendo to this experience. You went from black and white to color and to big emotional. Then what happened?
Then Fiona asked, "Do you want to go see another one? Should we go back to the hall? Should we go in?" And let's go do that. I had more I wanted to do, and was feeling great, and so we went back to the hall. And I should say, one thing that was very effective, I mean, Fiona's so fabulous at this, there was an image of a fluffy cloud, like the transitions. You might wonder about all these transitions, but every time we were sort of moving, she had on the fluffy cloud, which sounds odd as I'm saying it now, but it was very effective at the time. It was sort of like, okay, we're going to transition. Let's, you're in this safe encompassing, like, let's move. And so that's how she would move me between these different places. So we hopped on the cloud. We went back to the hall of doors, and this time, I mean, it all seemed very nice. And it was like I was, sitting in the seat, like, what's going to happen next? But we came to something that wasn't a door, it was a tunnel, and it was like stone, and it was lit by a torch inside. And she said, "Do you want to go down it?" And I'm like, "It's going to take courage, or I'm scared." And she said, "Okay, just take a minute. You're safe. Take some breaths." And it was funny. I physically felt fear in that moment.
Yeah.
Her voice again was magical, and I was like, "Okay, I can do this. I can go." And I went forward into this tunnel. And what happened next is the thing that really made me such a believer. I was in the Civil War. I mean, it was that time. It was Civil War times.
You went into a tunnel. You came out the tunnel.
I came out, and what I saw in front of me was the gray man, like at a campfire, and in a preciseness and definition of face and form that I've never had in my mind before.
Wow.
So it wasn't like the same image, here he is. It was a living person. It was an animated, a person.
And did you feel you were looking at yourself in a previous life?
This is the thing, because I've always assumed that was me. And then a second later, I was above him with a sword in my hand, and I looked down at my tunic, and I was in blue. I was a Union soldier, and I was up above him, and I on a rock above him. I think later I learned I was on a horse, and I killed him.
Whoa!
Right.
Whoa!
Yes, and so this is why, this was not my imagination. I have believed my whole life that I was, and maybe there's another life where I am a Confederate soldier, but on this one, I was a Union soldier, a mounted Union soldier, and I killed him with a sword. And it happened very quickly and suddenly, and it surprised the hell out of me. In that moment, to find out that, wait,
It surprised the hell out of Cynthia or the Union soldier?
I think out of Cynthia, because I hadn't had that story in your head. No, I hadn't had the story in my head. I just realized that I was not divining this. It was something that was being revealed to me.
Okay, wait, can I just...
Yeah.
So when you first saw the gray man, he was sitting around a campfire.
Right.
And then suddenly it was in the middle of battle.
I think I was a surprise attack. You know what I mean? He was at a campfire.
Oh.
And I quickly came to him because he didn't try to fight me. He
That's a little messed up.
Well, and that's it. I think, and I didn't I start crying? I mean, that I remember, there was some strong emotion.
There were some very, very strong emotions, and you just kept saying, "He was so perfect. He was so perfect. He was so pristine."
So do you feel
that was a big thing.
Do you feel like there was regret, from the point of view of the Union soldier, for what you...
I think that what I began saying is that this is my first kill. I think that he was I think he was the first person that I had killed.
And it was kind of a shocking experience for that
shocking,
Union soldier.
And it wasn't, and maybe to the fact that I surprised him, and he was pristine, and I,
made him less so.
Yeah, made him less so.
And the emotion that came over you, repeat that?
No, I think it was one, Cynthia being surprised, wait a second, this isn't the way I thought the story went or was going to go, and then just this remorse or regret over,
or just the
killing,
the shock of killing someone must be overwhelming.
It was a very strong emotion, and it was so interesting to feel emotion so acutely in this state of a story that I was suddenly in the story, or I was definitely the Union soldier. It wasn't it wasn't something I was seeing on a screen. It was definitely, I was in it. I was taking an active role. I was shown this vignette of my life.
Right.
But as opposed to just knowing that it had happened or seeing it in the after effect,
I
had the experience of it.
And did the experience with Fiona then continue past that?
Yeah, and I can't remember how we transitioned from that to the...
So we experienced everything we could around that. And then I said, do you want to go on and see what happens later in his life? So we took the fluffy cloud again, the cloud taxi, to the next important experience. And it was after the war. You were older. You survived the war.
Right.
And you didn't feel as much remorse. You kind of had gotten over it. It was war. You had to do it. You probably killed lots of others as well.
Right.
And you were just kind of happily living your life with your wife in your little place. You had a bit of land.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you remember from that?
Well, it was contentment, and I think resolution that no, I had to, the remorse or the pain of killing him had subsided.
Right.
And like as Fiona would say, like I think some recognition, and perhaps I was telling my wife the story. I don't know, but I was very content in that moment. I had done my job, and I could share it.
And now you were like living as a farmer.
I think I was definitely like kind of in a cabin. I had a pipe.
Pipe.
I had a pipe. I was a smoker.
Touch.
You know, and probably midlife, and the realization like, oh, I lived. Oh, I survived. Again, this wasn't something that I expected either. So that was brief. I didn't feel like there was a lot. Like once I had the realization, remorse was over. I survived the war. I lived past the war.
I smoked pipes.
And I smoked pipes. And my wife was not that attractive, but it was just she seemed anyway.
Did you love her?
I'm sure I did. I was very content with her. I was very content in that moment. But then Fiona said, shall we see how this one ends?
I asked you to die.
In a nicely asked.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what happened?
And so then I was outside of my cabin and I finally changed clothes. I was in a brown plaid shirt, had my hat on, and was working, and I immediately I had a heart attack. I felt this sharp pain in my chest.
How old were you, do you think?
40, 50, It, again, didn't seem tragic or sad. I went down, goner.
You knew you were dying.
I wasn't that afraid. I was just like, oh, that hurts, but it was fast and it was over quickly.
Right.
And fell to the ground.
Did you in Cynthia feel something?
I
in your
did
heart,
not. I didn't know. I didn't feel that.
I'm glad you didn't kill her in this life, Fiona.
Right. Well, what was funny was right before she got the heart attack, I felt it. I was this guy, he's dying of a heart attack. And probably in the recording, you see my face go, like, I'm like, oh. Yeah.
See if we can find that. We'll put that
But, so, again, like, no fear, didn't hurt, pretty comfortable, and I just melted into the ground. I became a gas, a liquid or something. Right. And I had this really interesting image, like nourishing the earth, or I looked up at the earth and everything was so green and lush, and I love nature and gardening, and I thought, God, this is such a cool, this is really cool to be able to see this.
And you didn't follow this one into the
no, we did.
Yes.
Wow, Cynthia, you're going all over the place.
I know. It's crazy to recount. I sound nuts, but pretty soon this substance or whatever I was started going up.
The soul of
this gas. I mean, we weren't on the fluffy cloud, but we were going through the clouds, and it was sort of became a goldish stream, and I was getting further away. I was going through the clouds and above them, and I noticed once I got above the clouds, I noticed that there were other gold streams all going up to something, and then the next reveal was this sense like, oh my God, that's God. Like I was, and this welcoming, like this sense of like incredible love and welcoming. And like I had landed in the receiving room of heaven.
Was it just a feeling or was there
a
visual?
Then there was like, as I said, Vacation Bible School God. I mean, it was a white man with a white beard.
No, really?
There was a lot of white, and extended, arms. But again, just this overwhelming feeling of love and acceptance and beauty and it was just all it was so beautiful. It was truly
And you were
remarkable.
really like bathed in that experience completely.
Yes. If you had told me that there was a bright light shining on it just was so real.
I think because I think people will bump on this idea that there's this thing, but I just
know,
want to say
I know.
that I think we all use the symbols that we've all been sort of weaned on, or trained on. Those are the symbols that, so it seems very natural to me that you would use this sort of Christian.
And again, back to a thing that, I think that God can take human form to relate. And at this first moment of your first introduction to heaven, you've been a farmer 5 minutes before. Like, it's kind of nice to have familiar vacation
relatable.
Bible school God.
Yeah.
I can mature beyond that and past the receiving room.
So
double.
you were in this presence of this
being
of this
right.
holy energy, sort of, and there were others.
There were others, and not that you could see faces, but my
Right.
sense was there were other, because again, I was in some sort of gas form or whatever, non-form, but the sense that this is a natural progression that everyone makes, and this is where we start, and it was really lovely. I don't even remember how that ended. How did that end? Where did it?
You know what? I think we stayed with it for I said take all the time you need with God. Enjoy that because it's so powerful and it's so true. Like that man, when he died, his belief was, I'm going to heaven or hell. That he didn't know about Buddha or source energy. He only knew about God or maybe Satan, right? So of course that's going to be, his experience. Like everyone's experience is different, and even like some people that aren't religious will see God. Some people that are religious will just see some beings of light or whatever. Like it's just, God is the name and the description. We think it looks like, a massive Charlton Heston as compared to the smaller Jesus Charlton Heston looking guy, right? So but the energy of it and the emotion of it is, I see it with people all of the time. Like when people are afraid to die, I'm like, please, if you're afraid to die, have a past life regression. Because then like I used to be afraid to die when I was young. I was like, it was a phobia. And when I started having like some past life experiences, I'm only afraid of maybe being in diapers, being in an old folks home with bad food is like my worst kind of fear. But dying, no fear.
Yeah, I agree. That's been one of the things I've thought about since this session is, I
feel
really
less
I have no fear
fearful.
of dying. I have no, and
By the way,
interested.
when it comes, you may feel
I know,
slightly differently
So
than that,
it's very simple.
but that's amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah, no, it was.
Well, I wanted to ask you. So you're actually getting into it. I want to say, you've taken so much information. You had these paradigms about this gray man and all these things, and then you get this other experience. What's so fun about this is you feel the authenticity of that information. And it's only been a couple of days, but how does this connect to your current life? How does it impact you? And you just mentioned one very significant thing, which is you no longer.
It was pleasant to see how easy it was. How
Right.
easy it was to just give up the body. Because, that's the other thing, like, you're dying, the body's dying. Like, I still felt very much alive in those, conscious, I guess, in those situations. One thing that's interesting in just the last part of the regression, so after, I know at some point Fiona took me back to the safe place where we started, and I don't know if the gray man, if we invited him there or he was just there waiting for me. I kind of can't remember that part.
We wanted, because you kept seeing him throughout your life, I felt like he might have a little attachment or entanglement with you. Just because like you kept seeing him, there's something there. So instead of just exiting the whole session, I said, let's take a couple of minutes to just reconnect with him, just to make sure that, everything's clear and you're not, holding on in some way. So we went to the safe place, we invited him in, and
He showed up.
I don't know.
And he was pristine again. He had been restored, and he was, youthful and beautiful. And I had a sense that he no longer, he did not bear me any ill. He'd forgiven me or whatever was necessary in that moment. and there was peace in being with him. Fiona said, ask him what his name is. And his name was Joshua. I asked him, and he said Joshua, and she asked him if you'll see him again. And I asked him, and he said, you might, kind of like laughing, you might. So I only tell that part of the story because it'll be interesting to see if I have images of the gray man again in my life. If I'll have that.
If this soul has incarnated in some other way that will intersect with your life or other lives.
Yeah.
Were there any people in these lives that you experienced that you feel are present in your current life?
The only question I have is whether or not the young man in the first situation is Alan, my current husband, because I had this, incredible love for this person and clear intimacy and so that's the thing. But in general, the other thing is.
And what's your answer to that? Just gut feeling.
I'd like to think yes. I mean, he and I often similarly believes in past lives, so I'd like to think that.
Alan believes in past lives?
Yeah, he has a sense of it too.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And our wedding vows were for time and eternity. We borrowed that line as opposed till death do us part, and so I don't know. I'd kind of like to think.
All right, so but let's get back to that question. I know it's only been a couple of days, but are there other ways in which you feel like this information informs your current life, or maybe?
I think I'm taking it in. I mean, the overwhelming feeling I have is just the pleasure in having this very personal proof point that spirituality is this kind of wider band of experience and practice and feeling, and I'm so curious to know more.
Yeah.
Right.
I think. Well, I'm sorry.
No. Like in different faith practices and who have embraced this. I want to understand the traditional reincarnation, thinking, and so it was. Like I said, I feel like I embarked on a new practice that I want to, get better at and develop more.
Yeah. Well, that's a huge change.
No, it created just incredible curiosity.
Yeah.
And because it was such a profound experience, and it was like a point of faith. Like, I think this is the case, but now I've had this experience, and my faith is so in the fact that past lives exist is so profound now because I've had this experience.
And it's really, you're not just talking about past lives. You're just talking, there is a bigger spiritual story out there, and I, Cynthia, am curious. I want to explore more and more.
Exactly.
It's bigger than that little story I had when I was a...
Yeah, no, exactly. It sounded like the octopus analogy, spirit, faith, energy, a lot of words. Like, I'm down here in the tentacle, and I know that I want to try to access that in this life, right? And I know I won't get there, but I just want to.
You don't know that.
No, but I want to know. I want to know.
You want to know more? I think I want to know more is the basis of every great spiritual journey. It's the same basis of the enlightened masters. I want to know more. So when you say I will never get there, you don't know that.
No, it's true. I just think I'm a neophyte on this, and I'm getting started, at this point in my life, but so open to the possibilities, and so that's why I'm so grateful for this opportunity to both of you, because I just feel like I jump started. It's something can be an intellectual curiosity, but once you've had real emotion in your heart around it, like.
I wonder if you might eventually change that point of view. This whole neophyte jumpstart thing. I said at the beginning of the show, I asked you because I felt you had a deep spiritual connection. I sensed that. Okay. And you keep on putting yourself in this tiny little box of I know nothing, I'm just a beginner.
Oh, we'll see.
Yeah, well, or maybe reconsider that because maybe that's not quite the truth. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for doing it.
What do you mean?
That
thank you.
Was an incredible,
incredible
story, and I just want.
It was so beautiful.
I want to thank Fiona. I think Fiona is so talented and so gifted at creating this environment for you to have this profound experience. So grateful to you.
It's a real talent. I'm so grateful, Fiona. I mean, really, I hate to use the word life changing lightly, but you've really opened a path and I did so many things, and I'm just so grateful. And you did it with such grace and tenderness, and it was so safe. You made me feel very safe, and so I'm glad that I was on that journey with you. So thank you.
I do have to say, you were really easy to work with, so you made it really easy as well.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for doing this. And
What a pleasure.
thanks, Fiona.
This was fun.
I've been on the east side trying to get some me time. Wanna see you every night in the meantime. We can make
If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to Realization Lab on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
lay out on the roof till the sun shows. Be horrible.